Writers, you've made it to part 4. I am so excited for you, and I'm also excited for me because this has been quite the steep learning curve. Figuring out how to record this workshop on TikTok and then upload it to Adobe Express and put it together, and then download it to my computer and then upload it to YouTube. So kudos to all of us for for getting to this point. This is the part where you actually start to really have some fun and you get to put your essay together. Real quickly, I am going to go over everything you've learned in parts 1, 2, and 3. I'm not going to go into any depth because we've already done that. So I'm just going to give you a real quick overview. So you have learned 5 primary things about how to write an essay that doesn't suck. Number 1, the cardinal rule of writing a personal essay is you must tell the truth. You can't make stuff up. Number 2, you have to say why what happened mattered. What did you learn, or what changed as a result? How did you change? How did someone else change? How did the world change? One of those 3 things. But why did what happened matter? Number 3, you need a great hook to start your story. Remember, we talked about how to start a story so that your reader feels instantly engaged and doesn't want to put it down until the last word. Number 4, we just went over show, don't tell. This is, all about using your 5 senses to describe the details of what you went through so that the reader can experience it like you did. And number 5, use compelling dialogue, not throwaway dialogue like, hi, how are you? I'm fine, how are you? I'm fine, nice weather, etc. But dialogue that actually gives us some insight into you and into the other people in your story. So those are the 5 primary things we have been over in parts 1, 2, and 3. In this part 4, I'm going to talk to you about how to structure your essay so that it flows smoothly, and then I'm going to send you off on your own to write your personal essay. And I would love it if whenever you're watching this, when you have written something that you feel really good about, send it to me. I would love to read it, and I will even give you some feedback if you like. So in the next panel, we are going to start talking about how to structure your essay so that it flows. So I'll see you over there.
So, whenever we talk about structure, the most important thing to remember is that you want to write a clear, compelling story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. I'm going to talk to you about 3 kinds of story structure, and you can decide which one best fits the story you want to tell. The first kind of structure I want to tell you about is called the hero's journey. This is a very popular story structure. If you are writing about overcoming a challenge or having had a huge learning experience as the result of something, or if you're writing a story about your own personal growth as the result of an event or something that happened, somewhere you went, somewhere you traveled to, somewhere you went to unexpectedly. All of these lend themselves well to the hero's journey structure, and I'll talk about that next.
Let's talk a minute about the hero's journey. This is a very interesting story structure, as I mentioned. I'm going to sort of walk you through it step by step so that you can take some notes, write this down, download the infographic, and then write your hero's journey by following along with this plan. So first of all, you're going to give us some background. Who were you before the event or the thing that happened? Was there something you were afraid to do, or something you were putting off, or was there something you were called to do that was unexpected perhaps? Next, in your story, you will say what the challenge was. So what was the thing that happened? Well, did you have to audition for a play, but you had stage fright, or did you have to try out for a team of some kind? Were you called upon to interfere with a bully situation? So what was the challenge? Next, what was hard for you about this challenge? Maybe you have stage fright and auditioning was going to be very difficult for you. Or maybe in the situation where you were called upon to interfere with bullying, you were afraid of the other person. At any rate, tell us what was hard for you about it, because we want to have an understanding of what you had to overcome in order to succeed. Next, so how did you get yourself to do it? If you were worried about the audition, or you were scared to intervene in a situation, or you were called to go somewhere that maybe you didn't want to go, how did you get yourself to do it? And finally, what happened to you as a result of stepping up to the plate? How were you changed, or how did you grow?
So here it is written out for you. And you can download this so that you have it at your fingertips to guide your way. And now I want to look at how it would play out with Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. So let's start at the beginning. We need some background information. Well, the background is Harry's a lonely kid stuck in a cupboard. His challenge? Well, a giant crashes in to say, "Hey, Harry, you're a wizard." What is hard for Harry? Well, at some point, an evil sorcerer is trying to steal a powerful stone, and Harry must face the danger head on and risk everything to protect it. How did he confront the difficulty? Well, a lot of different ways. I think he made some friends, he learned some magic. The bottom line is he wanted to prove himself in that situation, and so he did what was necessary. How did he grow as a result? He won the battle, as well as he won a place where he felt he truly belonged.
The hero's journey can be a little bit complicated, so let's talk about a simpler story structure called the before and after story. So this is the kind of structure you would follow if you want to write a story about something that happened to you, after which you were forever changed. Okay, it could be something fabulous that happened to you, it could be something terrible that happened to you, or it can be something that's neither fabulous nor terrible and just is. Maybe your family got a dog and that changed your life forever. Or maybe your family took a trip out of the country and you felt, it expanded your horizons and that changed you forever. So here's how that structure would proceed. First of all, you want to tell us what your life was like before the thing happened, before the event. How did you live? What did you do, day to day? What were you thinking about, etc.? Next, what exactly happened? What was the thing? And remember to give it to us in showing, not telling details. Next, how did it change the way you think about yourself? Next, what has your life been like since the event? Tell us how things are different for you now that the event is in your rearview mirror. And finally, that all important question, why does it matter? Or what did you learn? That's really what we read for. Remember, we want to know what you learned because we want to learn it right along with you. So that's writing the before and after story. And I invite you to try that. If you don't want to try the hero's journey, and we're going to talk about another story structure here in just a second.
Again, here is that writing the before and after story infographic for you to look at. Feel free to download that, and that way you have it in front of you when you go to write your story. So here is another way to structure your story. This is called the problem and solution story structure. So this is perfect for writing about, let's say you had a conflict or a fight. Let's say you made a huge mistake, and you want to write a story about that and how you resolved things. First of all, you want to tell us what the problem or the conflict was. What actually happened? Who did you conflict with? What did you do? What was the mistake you made? And remember to tell us about that in glowing terms, show, don't tell. Don't just put it out there on the page, but really show us exactly what happened, what you did. Next, what did you try to do about the conflict or the fight or the mistake? Maybe there were multiple things you tried to do. Maybe you tried apologizing. Maybe you tried getting revenge and you realized that didn't work. Maybe you tried to get somebody else to clean things up for us. Let us know. Tell us everything you did to try to resolve the conflict. And next, what finally worked and why? What did you finally hit on that allowed the conflict to resolve, or that allowed the mistake to be atoned for? What finally worked? What did you finally hit on? And finally, that all important question that every essay has to answer: why does this matter, or what did you learn? What did you learn from not just, from resolving the mistake, but from making the mistake or having the conflict in the first place? What did this whole thing teach you that you can take forward in your life and that you can tell us about it so that we can take it forward in our lives?
So here's another way to structure a story. Let's say you want to write about the best or worst thing that ever happened to you, but you don't want to phrase it in terms of the problem and solution. You can do that by beginning with telling us what the stakes are. So start by helping your reader understand what this moment meant to you. Let me give you an example. The day I found out we were moving across the country was the worst day of my life. Or, conversely, getting picked for the school play felt like winning the lottery. So, starting that way sets up for your reader why this experience was so significant. You're just diving right in and saying, hey, this is what happened. It was the worst day of my life. This is what happened. It was the best day of my life. Next, you want to build the scene, okay? So paint your reader a picture of where you were and what was happening when this big moment occurred. And we're always talking about showing, don't telling. So include a bunch of sensory details, what you saw, what you heard, what you felt. So for example, I was sitting at the kitchen table eating cereal when Mom sat down with that serious look on her face. So maybe she's about to tell you that you're moving across the country and she's pulling you out of your favorite school and away from your best friends. But this will help the reader feel like they're right there with you. Describe the actual moment when everything changed. We call this the moment of impact. When you got the news, or when you made the discovery, what was your immediate reaction? Did your heart race? Did you freeze up? Did you jump for joy? Of course, it's not enough to say my heart raced or I jumped for joy. We have to see and feel your heart racing. My heart pounded in my chest the way a tenor drum, sounds in a concert band or whatever. Make readers feel what you felt in that crucial moment. And then you have to talk about the ripple effects. So explain how this event changed things for you afterward. What happened next? How did it affect your relationships? How did it affect your daily life? Did it affect the way you see yourself? This is going to show your readers why this was truly the best or the worst thing that ever happened to you, because you are letting them in on its lasting impact on your life. So this is a really good way to structure a story about a best or worst thing that ever happened to you.
So here's a graphic of what I just went over. What are the stakes? Build the scene, describe the moment of impact, and what were the ripple effects.
Here is a very short 5-line story that illustrates what we just went over, the best or worst day of my life story structure. The day I auditioned for the school talent show was supposed to be my big moment. I stood backstage in my lucky blue shirt, heart pounding as I listened to the amazing singers before me. When they called my name, I walked out confidently, opened my mouth to sing, and nothing came out except a tiny squeak. The whole auditorium went silent. Then someone giggled, and soon everyone was laughing. I ran off stage embarrassed, but later I realized that moment taught me it's okay to fail spectacularly, and I actually tried out for drama club the next week. So that's just a very, very brief 5-line or so example of how you would go by that structure to tell a story about the best or worst day in your life. Writers, I'm going to leave you with some basic overview thoughts about writing essay. But for now, before we get to that part, I just want to say that you have all the tools you need now to go forth and write a fabulous story about something that happened to you. So, you don't have to think about writing a whole book at this point. When we talk about writing a story about ourselves, generally we're looking at around 800 words long. Maybe that's 2 pages, a little bit over. It's not so terribly much that you can't handle it. And then as you get more proficient and you feel more confident and comfortable with all of these skills, maybe you go longer. Maybe you write that novel or that memoir that you have in your mind. But for now, as I said, you have all of the tools. I hope you will download all of the worksheets, all of the all of the infographics that I've made for you, and that will guide you as you go through and write your story. There are not a whole bunch of them, so I don't think it will be overwhelming for you. But I want you to have fun above all, and feel like what a great honor and a great privilege it is to be able to tell your story, and what a great privilege it will be to your readers to be able to read and relate to whatever it is you went through. So happy writing, and as I said, I'm going to leave you with some parting thoughts about essay writing that will sort of tie everything together for you. My writer friends, we have come to the end of part 4, and I want to leave you with some thoughts about writing the personal essay. I am aware that the material can feel overwhelming, and I am aware that you can't figure all of this out, at one time. My hope is that as you go through your writing life, pieces of what you've learned here will come back to you, and or maybe you watch the workshop again, or you've downloaded some of the forms and you're looking at those again, and you understand things in a new way or in more depth. But I do want to leave you with some parting thoughts about writing personal essay. These are sort of big picture reminders. that you can take with you. And there's sort of like an overview, a big picture overview of kind of things to think about and have in mind when you go to write your stories. And the first one of these, I love this. The first one is find your why. So remember, we've talked a lot about that a personal essay isn't just writing what happened. It's not just writing about the situation. It's writing about why it matters. And so ask yourself, every time you sit down to write a personal story, what does this story reveal about me? And also, what does it reveal about being human? In that way, if you are able to tap into some universal truths in your story, your reader will be able to identify with what happened to you, even if they haven't been through exactly the same thing. One of my books is about my recovery from anorexia nervosa, and I remember distinctly somebody contacting me after having read the book and saying, I've never had an eating disorder, I've certainly never been anorexic, but I could relate to so much of what you were writing about, the dissatisfaction with your life and the feeling of being not in control of what was happening to you, and kind of the obsessive turning to things like counting calories and exercising and things like that to try to feel that you had some control of your life. You know, they said, I too have done that, not by counting calories, but maybe they did it by, I can't remember now, maybe by exercising or by shopping or whatever it was, but they could relate to my story because it was a human story about a compulsion. And I made it large enough that they could see themselves inside my story. So that all comes on under the heading of finding your why. The second one is anchor your story in the specifics. So small concrete details, this is part of, showing, not telling, the chipped coffee mug, the smell of wet leaves, etc. Those little tiny details that you might think, this doesn't matter, nobody cares about this, they actually are what does the heavy lifting of your essay. They are what pull the reader into your world and let them be there almost physically by reading about those sensory details. So again, anchor your story in the specifics. You want to balance your story with story and reflection, and I think we talked a little bit about this. You want to talk about what's going on and what happened, but you also want to stop and take a step back and reflect on what you're going through or what you went through. So you need both of those things to really make your story stay alive. So you're telling us the story, but you're also taking a step back and reflecting on what you went through and how it affected you. It's a very effective way of writing a story and bringing your reader in. The next one is keep your natural voice. Don't try to sound like a writer. Don't try to sound like somebody else who writes in a certain way. Don't try to sound like Hemingway or, Virginia Woolf or something like that. You're writing a personal essay, and the intimacy of a personal essay comes from authenticity. So you want to be your authentic self, talk like yourself, write like yourself, and you'll be fine. The next one is show, change, or discovery. You want to show how you were transformed by whatever it was you went through. Even if it's just a shift in your perspective, even if you went through something that was huge, but at the end of it, the only thing that changed was your perspective on things. Let's say you you were called on to break up a fight, between a bully and somebody else, and maybe it didn't even go well. Maybe you couldn't pull the people, apart or whatever. But at the end of that, you had a shift in perspective whereby you saw that it was important that you stepped in and you tried. And so even if something huge didn't happen from it, a shift in perspective like that, where it changes the way you think about things, that is huge. The next one is don't over-explain things. Trust your reader to follow along. Sometimes what you don't say has as much power as what you do say. So you don't feel like you have to spell every single thing out. Cut to the bone. This means revise your story. After you finish writing it, don't just hand it in. Don't just say, well, I'm done. You want to go back through, and here's something I tell all of my writers in all of my workshops: read your story out loud, just to yourself, just in a room with a closed door. You will be able to see where the story lags. Where you get bored reading is where your reader will get bored reading. So you want to fix those spots. You will find places where you have said things twice. It's very revealing when you read your own work aloud. As for the end of your story, leave the door open. So great essays don't necessarily tie everything up in a neat bow. You can end on an image, you can end on a question or a moment. That example I gave you about the bullies, you can end on, I stood in the hall and I watched the crowd disperse. That can be your ending, and it sort of leaves the door open for your reader to see that life went on, and for them to really be able to think about, well, I wonder what happened the next day, or whatever. So you don't have to tie everything up so neatly. Lastly, think of your personal essay, your story, as a conversation with your reader. You aren't just recounting events for them. You're not just saying, hey, this happened to me, and then that happened, and then this happened. You are inviting readers to sit with you inside your experience. Okay? You are inviting them into your world for this particular thing, this particular story that you want to tell. And that is a gift you give to your readers, and listening is a gift that your readers give back to you, the writer. And so I wish for you all of these wonderful gifts as you go forward with your writing.